Crying, Jesus, help me to see the morning light of one more day. But if I should die before I wake, I pray my soul today. Can you feel the hearts of the children aching for home, for something of their very own, reaching hands with nothing to hold on to, but hope for a better day, a better day. Crying, Jesus, help me to feel the life again in my own. But if unknown roads lead away from home, give me a loving arm.
Good evening. Welcome to Metaphysical Concepts. Tonight we have William Buhlman with us. William is author of Adventures Beyond the Body and Secrets of the Soul. Tonight we're going to talk to him about over the past 2 decades, William has developed a proven, effective system to experience safe, self-initiated out-of-body adventures. He conducts an in-depth 3-day workshop entitled Out-of-Body Exploration. Welcome to the show, William.
Well, hello, David. How are you?
I'm okay. I understand you've had a long day, so we're going to get at this right away. William, what is an out-of-body experience?
Well, David, essentially it's a separation of consciousness from the body without death occurring. A near-death experience, of course, is when there's a temporary death occurring.
Uh-huh.
So that distinguishes the two.
Okay, so at that point, does the soul leave the body? Does the mind leave the body?
Well, there's no evidence to separate or distinguish between the two at the moment.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we could split hairs on that, but we don't really know, except that it's the knowing beingness of the person, the I-ness of the person, the awareness of the person. Now, whether that's the soul, we don't really know, but it's everything that the person would consider themselves.
It's their personality, so to speak.
It's their personality, their mind, their beingness.
Okay, you've been experiencing OBEs, which is out-of-body experiences, yourself for, 30 years now?
Yes, over 31 years.
And did you always have the ability to do this, or and if not, how did it start for you?
Well, I back when I was in college, I was going to college at University of Maryland, and a friend of mine actually had a spontaneous out-of-body experience, which are far more common than many people would probably know of. And he come to me and told me about it, and it shocked me. I had never heard of it. I had never, it wasn't on my radar screen anywhere. So, but he described it to me. It scared him. It shocked him, and it got me really interested in it, and I wanted to have the experience. So then I began to investigate it and found that there was actually books and techniques available to self-induce the experience. And that's when I began to really study the subject, and then I began to try the different techniques that were available.
And then so you've actually been experiencing OBEs yourself for approximately 30 years. What kind of questions can out-of-body experience answer for us? Can it answer the mysteries of life?
Well, I think they can. We have to remember that most of our religious beliefs are based upon just that, beliefs. There's no real hard first-person evidence. And most people live their lives based on the written words of men that were written 2,000 years ago that may have had some kind of experience. The power of an out-of-body experience is that it provides a personal verification, a very powerful verification of your own, let's say, immortality, your own ability to exist beyond your body. And right there, that's
it's actually experiential rather than a word of mouth experience.
Oh, absolutely. That's what makes it so life-changing for people, including myself. 31 years ago, I was an agnostic. When I had my first out-of-body experience, it changed my whole belief system, my whole self-concept. Everything that I viewed around me suddenly changed because I knew instead of believed. It's a very powerful experience for people. And it's a difficult thing to just put into words because suddenly you're a knower instead of a believer. And it's really a transformative event for many people.
Which actually creates a whole responsibility to the knowing. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. Your priorities change in life. I know mine were radically changed. It changes a lot of the ways that you approach your life. You want to know even more. I think one of the things that it's done for me after my first experience in 1972, I wanted to become even more of an explorer, what I call an inner explorer. I wanted to know. I no longer could be, let's just say I couldn't be pacified with beliefs anymore. I had to know what I was, where I was going, what's my purpose here, where did I come, basically where am I going? Because most people live their lives in total ignorance of the big questions of life.
Right, the profound questions that they actually look to a pastor or a priest or a monk or whatever to answer those questions. Now, let me ask you this: there's signs of out-of-body experiences all through, say, organized religion. From Moses to all the way back to Buddha. To Christ, did all of our religions start pretty much with somebody else's experience of out-of-body travel?
I feel strongly, and I write about this in one of my books, that many of the religions today were created from one person's out-of-body experience. I'll just give a couple examples of this.
Sure.
Look at Islam, which is the fastest-growing religion in the world today. The entire religion of Islam is based on Muhammad's what is called the night journey.
Right.
Where Muhammad basically claims in quite some detail that he left his body and travels through what he terms 7 heavens of reality. Now, granted, this is all in text that was written many hundreds of years ago, but it's very clear. He is talking about leaving his body and traveling through these other dimensions where he goes and visits places that are like heaven and hell.
Right.
And he talks about different levels or dimensions of reality. And this is the cornerstone of Islam. And it's basically based on his OBE. Of course, those terms, out-of-body experience, etc., didn't exist back then.
Right.
And there's so many examples. Revelations, for instance, one of the most revered books of the New Testament,
right,
begins with the phrase, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. What does this mean? I was in the Spirit. Was he having, a lot of people think it's just a mystical event. Well, I think it's more than that. I was in the Spirit is a common term to mean that you were beyond your physical body. I was in the Spirit means just that.
Right.
I was in my spiritual body. I was experiencing my spiritual body, and then I observed this, and then, of course, he goes into these observations he made while out of body, where he describes the future of humanity, let's say.
Uh-huh.
And there's so many references to this throughout all biblical texts. Like another example is St. Paul talking about in 2 Corinthians, whether in the body or out of the body, I know not. I mean, and then he goes on to say, but I heard things that were unspeakable. And he talks about going into the third heaven. He doesn't say I was in heaven. He talks about going into the third heaven.
Right, which would be what the
one of the inner dimensions of reality that I write about that people do experience, because one of the major discoveries that out-of-body not just theory,
Right.
that the universe is multidimensional.
Right. Then that was my next question, is OBE the travel between dimensions?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, an out-of-body experience is someone leaving the body. Let me preface this by explaining to the viewers
Sure.
that the physical world that we see around us, this is based on countless out-of-body experiences.
Right.
Physical world that we know around us is like the thin skin of the apple, the outer epidermis layer of the universe. And when people have out-of-body experiences, they're not going out of body, they're going in. They're going into an inner, more subtle body within themselves. And when they do this, they're actually going within the universe, going towards the center core of the universe. And the universe, as we know now, is made of many different dimensions. Each one, as we go inward, becomes more and more subtle in nature. And that's why St. Paul in 2 Corinthians talked about a third heaven. He actually traveled into what he perceived to be the third inner dimension.
Or the third sphere, maybe?
Yeah, if you want to consider it like a sphere, but it's definitely a dimension that's separated from the others in,
Right.
let's just say, density.
Right, density. Therefore, let me ask you this: Are there a certain number of dimensions or spheres on the other side?
Well, there's a lot of theories about this, as you probably know.
Sure.
My feeling is that it could be, by all intensive purposes, unlimited. I don't know, and I know a lot of people are quick to put the number 7 out there. A lot of the Tibetan yogis and theosophists, there's been a lot of groups in the last 100 years have made the claim that there's 7 dimensions or 7 planes of existence.
Right, and
I have not found that to be, in my experience, I have not found that to be necessarily accurate.
okay,
But the point is that the overall concept is accurate.
right.
Multiple dimensions. Too
Okay.
many people get caught up in the semantics of, well, this or that. The bottom line here, the facts speak for themselves.
But what is the substance of the dimensions? Does each dimension have a certain substance to it?
Each dimension becomes progressively more thought responsive and more subtle in nature. That I know from personal experience.
Okay, but do you each dimension is starting with the? Are we speaking about a lower dimension towards a higher dimension, or?
Lowest dimension of all is we're experiencing now.
Right. Right. Okay.
That's what's kind of freaky about the whole thing.
Right.
This is the densest dimension in existence that I have seen or observed, the physical.
Would it kind of be man's intent to? And I'll get back to that question in a minute. Would that be one of our purposes, do you think, on Earth, to be in that we are at the lowest dimension, to strive to lift ourselves to those higher dimensions?
Absolutely. I think that's what evolution truly is.
All right.
The evolution of consciousness is all about evolving, self-evolution, so that we move inward and grow to, let's just say, join the more enlightened beings that exist on the inner worlds. And in a way, and I write about this in my books, and in a way, the outer worlds the world that we see around us is a slowed down molecular training ground for the undeveloped.
Sure.
That as you move inward, thoughts create reality very quickly. And the further you move inward to the more subtler realms, thoughts become more and more powerful. In other words, the result between your thought and the manifestation of your thought becomes quicker and quicker. And in other words, you can't have people like Hitler running around on the inner planes creating chaos for all the other inhabitants. And where would you put people that are disruptive and can't control their own thoughts, let's just say, can't control their own animal
Instinct.
or whatever,
Right.
thoughts, deeds? You put them in an environment that's slowed down enough where they do less damage.
Right, and let it be their goal to evolve to the higher stratus.
Exactly.
Right.
You put them in a place where they can do the least damage.
So getting
The physical world.
I'm trying to refer to some of our conversation in terms that some of us may have already heard. Is an out-of-body experience, can we consider it the same as astral travel, or are there different degrees of out-of-body experiences?
Well, there definitely is different kinds of out-of-body experience. Astral travel is one form of out-of-body experience. Let me just preface this by saying an out-of-body experience is now it's become a general term, meaning any kind of experience that takes the individual beyond their physical body. And, of course, one form of this is astral travel, meaning you experience what is generally termed the astral plane. And I hate the word astral plane because I think it's inaccurate. But it's become part of our culture. So the bottom line is it's the second, what I perceive as the second inner dimension. First, this is the outer, then there's the parallel world, and then there is the astral. The astral is actually almost like an intermediary. It's a vast realm that is thought responsive, but it's not nearly as thought responsive as the higher dimensions.
Can I ask you this? There being, the thought of 7 dimensions. You said earlier that there was religions that that thought there was 7 spheres or 7 dimensions. Could that be that those 7 dimensions are by the way, are those dimensions the places we go when we pass out of this life and go to the other side, waiting to come back?
That's exactly it. When people die, there is no such thing as death.
Right.
Everybody continues.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether it's the evil person or the saint. They all continue. Now, where most people go is different places. At this point in our evolution, most people end up on certain areas of the astral plane.
Right.
And there they continue to live in many aspects very similar to how they've lived here.
So in the process, okay, I'm going to try to make this a process here. So those 7 dimensions are what we go as humans, and then you say that there's you believe that the spheres on the other side are infinite, which means they go beyond the 7. But is there 7 that we go to when we leave here, and then there's more past the point where we don't have to come back to Earth, like, say, the evolution of being a piranha or a sun or whatever?
Well, I think that most people experience, let's just say, the first or the first 3. Most people that are in a physical body are not, let's just say, of the spiritual evolution of a Buddha or a Jesus. They're the type of people that would evolve to the higher levels.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to split hairs here. I just think this is just an accurate way to look at it.
Sure.
Most of us are still working on a lot of issues. That's why we're in our physical body.
Right. And it isn't actually splitting hairs. It's to myself anyway. It's an accurate way of explaining to our viewers kind of the process that we don't actually see. We can't experience with touch or smell or our 5 senses, and that there's something more out there than that.
Right. And really, that's why this is so important to all your viewers, because now we're talking about theory, what people will look at this as some kind of a theory.
Right.
Really not. People have the ability to experience this for themselves.
Sure.
And that is what is so empowering about this. It makes it so different than anything else you may hear about or read about, because most people are out there believing in this and believing in that. I don't believe in 7 dimensions. I've experienced many different dimensions myself. I've been there. I've communicated with loved ones. I've communicated face-to-face with a deceased mother. I've been there. I know for a fact that this is a reality, and that's what makes this so powerful.
And another reason for explaining this kind of systematically is so that maybe, we have quite a metaphysical community here in western Montana. And you know, I think, you know, of course, let's push them to your book, The Secrets of the Soul, and to your website, outofbody.com, and we'll give that information here in a little bit. But I think, you know, there's probably a measure of our viewers that experience some of these things themselves and don't know how to, you know, can't put a grasp on just what they're experiencing.
David, I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly what my research has brought out.
Uh-huh.
As you know, I've done what has come to be the largest survey ever conducted on out-of-body experiences.
Right, 16,000 people and over 16,000 people in 32 different countries.
Yes, and one of the things that became very clear to me is that there's a tremendous amount of people having experiences that they don't understand.
Sure.
Just to explain this a little more, there's a lot of phenomena that's very common to an out-of-body experience, and I think your listeners and viewers will understand this. One of them is sleep paralysis. You awaken, you're fully conscious, but you can't move your body. This is a direct relationship to OBE. Another one is hearing your name called while you're sleeping, or being touched, or feeling someone in your bed when there's no one physically there. Another is buzzing, humming, roaring sounds.
Right.
Very common.
Can you have an out-of-body experience, say in delta state? Delta state is a sleep state. Am I right, or is that beta? In the sleep state, can you have an out-of-body experience and not know it?
Yes, and that's what most people do.
Right.
Based on what I have discovered over the last 31 years, I believe now that most people have an out-of-body experience as they sleep to some level. And they're not consciously open enough to acknowledge it as such.
Right.
Let's face it, we don't even know, modern science doesn't know what a dream is.
Right.
We really don't know what that is. I mean, people can give some, you go into REM sleep during this cycle. Yes, we do have evidence that there's changes, but no one even knows what the heck a dream is.
Well, you coach them on an out-of-body experience, William.
Well, one of the things that people use their dreams for is a platform to become more conscious.
Right. Let me ask you this. So a person can go to sleep, have an out-of-body experience in their sleep, and not remember it in the morning when they wake up, correct?
It's very common.
Okay, so what, say a person that talks in their sleep, can we actually go to sleep, have an out-of-body experience, not remember it in the morning, talk in our sleep? Are we being taught on the other side? Are we going through instruction? Could that be part of that? Part of the answer to that?
It can be. There can be any number of things. It's a very busy, involved universe. I believe a lot of things occur at night as people sleep. There's interactions that occur. There is learning that occurs. Let's face it, the whole purpose for our existence here is for training and learning. It's like a school.
Sure.
School doesn't stop just because you're asleep. So yes, there is that avenue, that aspect, but there's a lot of things that happen.
Sure.
There's also a recharging. I think the OBEs have, let's just say, an impact on our recharging system.
Our VIF, the life force, you mean?
Right. The same way of dreams. As we know, if you dream in so many days, people become psychotic. There's a human necessity to dream. Matter of fact, it's a necessity in all mammals. It isn't just humans, because dogs dream, cats dream. We know that if you ever, anybody that owns a dog or a cat, seen their little legs running while they're asleep and seen the rapid eye movement.
Speaking of education in this process, can a person leave their body, have an out-of-body experience, and go help another person that they know?
Absolutely. That happens also.
And
they can help or they can be helped. Let's just say I ran into this during the 9/11 process, where
really?
people wrote to me, and matter of fact, they actually left their body and was drawn to someone who had just died during 9/11, and they told me that their body looked like it was in shards, and I'm talking about not their physical body, but their astral body, for lack of a better word, was torn up, and they were assisting in the healing of that person on the other side. Now, there's been several people that have, let's just say, made these claims of healing others.
Sure.
While in an out-of-body state.
Right.
Which makes perfect sense, especially for someone that in the physical world is trained in healing.
Right. So, and do you know what's, everybody it has the kind of like a built-in mechanism to help those that they love. So you actually had, was it through this survey that you had the experience of other people having an out-of-body experience and going and healing somebody else?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, that was one of the chapters I was going to add in Secret of the Soul. But the book was running too long, so I had to edit that chapter out. I had over 20 people in this chapter that had healed others or themselves. One person actually healed themselves during an operation. They were floating above their body, and they were bleeding profusely. Again, they claim. Again, this is all I can say is what people have told me, that they have healed themselves by directing energy, healing energy to themselves. They were having a hemorrhage, and that they knew that it was happening. And they floated above their body and just instinctively knew what to do. They weren't trained for it. They just knew that they were fully conscious and that they had to send healing energy to their own body. And that, of course, the bottom line is this person recovered very quickly. But I have received multiple stories such as this.
I looked for it in your book, too, by golly. I did.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, there was a couple chapters I had to, it was already 272 pages.
Well, it's quite an extensive book as it is, and for our viewers, I want to repeat the book. It's The Secret of the Soul by William Buhlman. And let me go back to, does each dimension have a specific color?
No, I have not seen that to be factual in any way.
Okay.
I know that's the existing, everybody loves to talk about colors. I've never seen anything that would give any credence to that.
Okay.
I've seen multiple colors in different dimensions.
Okay.
So I personally, I have not found anything to back that up.
Okay.
It's a very popular belief system currently.
Can the astral body through an OBE? I mean, are you limited, or can you say travel outside this nebulous?
Well, if you're in your astral body, you can travel anywhere in the astral plane. That's where you are limited to that level of existence, just like we're limited in our physical bodies to the physical world. So yes, there's that limitation. Now, as you know, there's a lot of people have made observations. The Stargate, I don't know if, I wasn't going to go into this, but many people know that the military spent over $50 million in the Stargate program, where they were using trained psychics from the military to spy on the Soviets.
Right. And that, actually, we have David Morehouse coming on as a guest here next week.
Well, then he's the man to talk to about that.
Yeah,
he was involved in that program, so he can give you more insight into that. But that, even though it's called remote viewing, the remote viewing is a sister to OBEs. Now, in the old days, by meaning 20 years ago, I've been around a while, but remote viewing used to be called psychic viewing or just psychic vision.
Yeah.
And remote viewing term is actually a very new, for now, of course, now there's technical remote viewing, but it's just a new spin on a very old subject.
Yeah, the old subject when I first ran across it, I think they called it clairvoyance.
Or clairvoyance. It's all the same. All psychic, let's just say psychic abilities, for lack of a better word, are interrelated. Because our senses, because we are much more expansive than just an animal body.
Right.
And because of that, we have potentials that are just beginning to tap into. And remote viewing is one of those potentials. And the next step in remote viewing is OBEs, where you actually leave your body in full awareness, not just, let's just say, psychically see an event. You go to the event in full consciousness and observe it. But the two are still related.
So how just to go experience and have the experiential process of an out-of-body experience and astral travel and the different spheres or dimensions, you know, to see it is one thing, but how does one evolve from the experience? How does one evolve on a personal level because of the experience?
Oh, it's such a giant opening for people in general, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
As clearly as I can, it answers questions from personal experience. It takes you from being a believer to a knower. Suddenly, you spent the vast majority of humanity spends their entire life fixated upon a belief system.
Sure.
They've been told that they have to depend on the church for the answers.
Right.
Or they have to depend on some book for the answers. But yet, you know, when you look back in history, Jesus and St. Paul and Mohammed and Buddha, they didn't depend on a book. They were rebels in their own day. They believed in having a personal relationship with God, with having a personal experience of, let's just say, exploration, where they went inward and obtained answers.
So they went in. So
in other words, I don't know how else to put it. How did Buddha become Buddha except by having his own spiritual experience?
Okay, so to just go and astral travel and see the spheres, is it the influence of the vibration of the different dimensions, or do you go over and go get there and ask specific questions and get specific answers depending on what dimension you're in?
It goes way beyond either of those.
Okay.
Where does wisdom come from? This is what I have found. We are directly connected to, for lack of a better word, God.
Okay.
And if we're directly connected, imagine when you leave your body, what direction are you going but towards your higher self? By higher self, I mean that aspect of yourself that is directly connected with God. Through out-of-body experiences, and this is what I train people to do in my workshops, I train people to go and demand, for lack of a better word, experience their higher self. In other words, during an OBE, you make that demand upon yourself that now I experience my higher self. And you know what happens? It is amazing. People you shoot up. It's, for lack of a better word, you feel like you have shot out of your body, flowing through layers of color within yourself.
Sure.
Unbelievable to describe, but you actually end up experiencing something that is way beyond words that we could even begin to deal with. You end up experiencing a higher aspect of yourself, and that's where the answers come from. That's where the wisdom and the knowledge comes from. It's not from reading and from communicating with other people. It's from connecting with that higher aspect of yourself.
Sure.
And potentially connecting with God. And but the first step, of course, is to connect with your higher self,
right,
or what the yogis for thousands of years called self-realization. And that's when you truly recognize, because you experience it yourself.
Okay, you experience
yourself.
Right, you experience yourself, and so my question would be to you actually go to your higher self for the information to evolve, because evolve is as we sit here, we're at the lowest dimension that we can possibly be at as beings, and to strive to be how do we learn the information of the higher dimensions is through our higher self. Our higher self explains it to us.
We become it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We are it. We're not disconnected from it.
Right. I understand.
We are, and the more when we become it, we absorb that information because we are already there. We connect with it on that level, and it's not like it's spoon-fed or anything like that. You obtain that knowledge for yourself, that wisdom, that understanding.
Okay. Is our higher self is far along in the evolutionary process as is capable to go?
In my experience, it's the highest that I have experienced in my lifetime, but
Okay.
I can't answer that. I just know that's been, again, this is an abstract term,
Sure.
but it just means it's the highest aspect of yourself that I feel you can experience while still in a physical body, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Okay, and then it's actually does experiencing your higher self and does it actually raise your physical vibration?
I think it does. I think it has to have an impact on your physical body. I think it must. Again, we're talking about stuff where we may not have evidence, but I can tell you, I'm 54 years old and I never get sick. I've never been in a hospital. I've never been admitted to a hospital.
I'll tell you, I'm looking at your photograph right now, and you look pretty sharp for being 53, buddy.
So I mean, I feel great. But I think all of us have a different mission.
Right.
Too. We have to consider there's karmic.
Right.
I'm not trying to be simplistic about this because there's also karmic. For instance, some people need physical problems because they have lessons to learn related to it. Maybe on another avenue, I have a mission to fulfill.
Right.
And getting this information out, I feel. Now, I know that to be a fact.
Right. So you're preserved in that mission.
In my mission,
Right.
I need to be healthy. I have to be energetic, and I think that's helped also because when we work, let's just say, for consciousness takes care of those, or the universe takes care of those that serve. And I really think there's an aspect of that that's very important for people. The universe is much like a mirror. And when we give, we receive. And when we're constantly asking for stuff, the universe is constantly asking us back.
So
Those that are willing to give will always receive because the universe is much like a mirror. And this is all interconnected.
sure. So the process of evolution in out-of-body experience is going there, connecting with your higher self, coming back and actually living that. Now we can go over there, and it's like standing at the OBE is just an analogy. You've put your hand on the doorknob and you've opened the door and walked through the door. Is there still more to the process of evolution, like having to act on the information we come back and having to?
Absolutely.
Right.
I think it's very important what you do with the information. I mean, a lot of people, it's like anything else in life. It's what you do with it. I think it has a lot to do. This is still the primary training ground. We've made a decision to incarnate. 6 billion people have incarnated in a physical body for the sake of their own evolution.
Right.
This is a tough training ground. It's one of the toughest around.
Right.
It's like the Matrix, the ultimate illusion, that people all think it's real, but yet it's just a temporary facade.
Let me ask you this: has there been race structures on this planet in the past, say that this has been brought up in the past here at the show? Has there been race structures in the past that actually, as a race structure, they left their bodies and traveled in other dimensions?
You mean permanently?
Well, no, not permanently, but as how do I say this? With they, like, say yourself, you've learned and you've studied it along with your contemporaries, and you have learned the process of out-of-body experience, and you come back and you teach this to us. Has there been race structures in the past that could leave their body and have an out-of-body experience at will?
I think there have been, sure. I think. Now you're talking about individuals?
No, actually race structures. You know, kind of like the Atlanteans. Could the Atlanteans or?
Hey, I tell you the truth. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I never give that much thought.
Now, let me ask you this: can a person go over, or a group of people go over in other dimensions and do things that they're not supposed to be doing? I mean, it would do the universal laws allow that to happen? And because there's a group of people right now, and I won't mention their name, but from what I understand, they go to other dimensions, like they're building cities in other dimensions.
Right.
And to me, that would seem, in my finite mind, it would seem to me that somehow that would break the physical laws of the universe and create a karma. And another reason why I ask this is because I wonder why, as a race structure, we don't. Why don't we all have the aspiration to leave our body and experience these things?
Well, number one, most people are totally conditioned to believe that that's all they are is a body. It's a sad, sad fact.
Right, and it's a bad thing to have an out-of-body experience.
Well, let's face it, a lot of religions have actually
demonized it.
That because of fear. It wasn't, we forget that only 600 years ago, people thought it was the devil's work to try to cross the Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
We forget that. It wasn't that long ago that really people thought they were going to fall off the earth and that you'd be damned for even attempting such a feat.
And people got killed just for the thought of it.
Well, and
Galileo.
People were burned at the stake for saying that the earth wasn't the center of the universe.
Right.
They literally were burned by the stake by certain religious powers. And, in total evolution, that wasn't that long ago. We're still living in a very primitive, belief-structured, dominated state of consciousness. Remember, this is about states of consciousness.
Sure.
And the vast majority of humanity are still, unfortunately, the victims of some very primitive belief systems that are based on ignorance, not on knowledge of the universe, but total ignorance. Because they were founded on the premise of control.
Right. Control of the masses.
Right. And you control the masses, you grow your organization, and you manipulate those masses. And today, what do we have? We're seeing it all around us. 9/11 is a result of that.
Right. But you've been at this for 30 years. You've been involved with it for 30 years. Let me ask you this question. Do you see a movement towards the masses finding organized religion and those groups that you just spoke about inadequate and inadequate to fulfill them? Do you find a move towards that?
I wish I could say yes. No, I do not at the moment. I see the status quo in many cases occurring. I think that evolution is an individual process.
Right.
I mean, look at people. 2,000 years ago, there were enlightened beings walking on the earth, and there was also mass murderers. I mean, the world hasn't changed that much. I wish I could give a more positive outlook. I see a lot of plurality occurring with this whole subject. I see gross ignorance, and I also see individuals that are moving forward to their own personal enlightenment, which of course is what I write about and I talk about. But I stress to people that this is an individual process.
Sure. Let me ask you this:
You're not going to go into your church and find someone that's going to talk about these subjects in an open-minded manner.
Right. Let me ask you this: do you see more novices now than you did, say, 20 years ago?
I have seen over the last, especially the last 20 years, let's just say a resurgence of interest in this topic. That's one of the reasons Adventures Beyond the Body give you an example. I do workshops in Europe all the time, and I'm doing two for the last 2 years in Italy, which is probably the most Catholic place on the planet. And I'm seeing a huge. My books are selling like crazy in Italy and in Germany too. And there is groups of people that are waking up to the fact that there's more to the universe than just believing in the words of the priest. That there's more. There's things that can be learned. There's things that we can do. Like Jesus said, "What I have done, you will do even greater."
Even greater.
And people now are awakening to that, but it's not like a group consciousness. It's more like individuals that are just awakening to the fact that there's more to life than just believing in my spoon-fed philosophies.
I appreciate the fact that you have, there's many authors and many books and many practitioners and teachers of out-of-body experiences and astral travel and what have you, but I appreciate the fact that you went out and you done a survey to kind of, I don't know why you did it, but to me what it does is it adds validity, it adds substance that this, over 16,000 people in 32 different countries experience this, and the experiences are quite similar.
Oh, absolutely. It was remarkable in that regard.
What is the most...
I tell the difference from people's experiences in all of these countries all around the world. People's experiences are all quite similar. And they weren't comparing notes.
Right. China wasn't
But when you think about it, I mean, that people were literally, they're all explaining this paralysis and these buzzing, humming sounds and these floating sensations. They're all describing the same kind of phenomena.
Do any of these people in your survey get together and talk about their experiences?
Oh, yeah, they do that on my forum.
You have a forum.
International forum on my website.
And that's, your website is?
astralinfo.org.
www.astralinfo.org.
And people can join. It's free, and they talk about their experiences. It's unedited. I don't go on it unless I have to go in and edit someone. But it's totally, you join. It's free, and then you go in and you talk to other people that have had experiences. And anybody can do it. There's people in there from Africa, from Asia, from all over the world, and they all talk together on their experiences, comparing notes, what worked for them, why did this happen. That's why I started it. It's the oldest one of mine. I think I started mine in '96, and it's the oldest one in existence, to my knowledge.
You've done a very good thing here, William, and you've added a lot of validity to what has been demonized for hundreds and maybe thousands of years. And let me ask you what you tell me how you think alien abductions are related to out-of-body experiences.
Well, as you probably know, I've spoken at some of the largest, let's just say, alien contact phenomena conferences in the United States, including the international one held in Laughlin every year. I've spoken there 3 times now. Large audience, 800 people. This is a pretty large conference. And I do an hour-and-a-half presentation on the connection between OBEs and alien abduction. And the connection to me became so clear, I even added a chapter in Secret of the Soul. It's simply this. The phenomena that people experience, the common phenomena, such as the paralysis and the lights and the floating, and there's a list of things that I have in my books. The people that share alien abduction experiences, when you talk to them and they start to share their experience, they sound identical. I cannot tell the difference between the onset of an abduction experience and the onset of a quote-unquote OBE. I have received over 200 letters from people that shared their abduction experiences. And every time, when you take away the word abduction, the two will sound absolutely alike. because I feel that many of the alien abduction and contact, let's say, experiences have been misinterpreted. People have been, they bought into a belief system that, oh yeah, that's what that must be. Because that's, a lot of people, they've watched X-Files. They've seen all the movies about abductions. They didn't have a clue what an OBE was. So they immediately said, that is what it must be.
It's alien.
It had to be.
Right.
Somebody's doing that to you. You poor guy. You're the victim of that paralysis. Somebody's touching you. You're paralyzed. You're moved to a new location, an alien location. Of course it's alien. You're in another dimension, for God's sake. It couldn't get any more alien. There's
Right.
nothing more alien than leaving your body.
Right. You talk about many things. I'm going to plug your book here for a minute. It's Secrets of the Soul by William Buhlman. And you talk about so many things. Part one, the testimonies. You talk about meetings and messages beyond the body, childhood out-of-body experiences, in which, you know, that a lot of people, that's where they first get their first out-of-body experiences as a child, correct?
Yes, they sure do. The vast majority of people, based on the survey results, which surprised me, to tell you the truth, because I personally didn't remember any experiences when I was a child. But based on the survey results, the vast majority of people had their first experience when they were, let's say, less than 12 years old.
Right.
Especially between 4 and 12.
Wow.
When they had their first experience.
And have you put together any reasons why that might be, or you just kind of?
I have.
Yeah?
I think based on, again, this incredible pool of information, I think that children, number one, are more open than adults.
Right, a little cleaner, a little purer.
They haven't been shut down. They haven't been as conditioned.
They haven't been diluted by the influence of the world, so to speak, eh?
And the conditioning that we are a hunk of flesh. Remember,
Right.
we go through this intensive conditioning from birth to make us believe that, you know, we're a male, we weigh this much, I'm this tall. Everything, think about it, from the moment you're born, everything is about I, and then you point to this hunk of flesh. I am this many pounds, I am this tall. We take it for granted, but that's a conditioning process. No one trains you as a youth to say, I am pure soul, I am God, I am, you know what I mean?
Right.
We're taught to be a hunk of flesh.
Right, and to limit us for what purpose? To limit our abilities for the purpose of control.
Well, yeah,
Control
you
the
can't
masses.
control somebody that knows they're a piece of God or a part of God.
You
How can
can't-
you control that?
And the really cold part about that is our Constitution of the United States. The Constitution is actually set up, whereas I think that, and listening to you speak, out-of-body experience creates a measure of individuality. The person is an individual rather than a part of the mass.
And you can't control an individual who knows who they are.
Right. Well, the Constitution is actually set up to
Knows
be
who
that.
they are.
Right. And you talk about so much in this book, combat and trauma-induced experiences. How many times have you heard, I was changing a tire on the car and I was underneath it and the car fell on me, and the next thing you know, I was 10 feet away from the car and I woke up.
Oh, absolutely. It's a common experience.
Sure.
Doctors talk about this all the time. There's been many, many books written about people that had OBEs during surgeries.
Yeah.
I mean, there's doctors that have written books about this entire subject.
Right. Your book talks about transformational experiences, the thought-responsive universe, extraterrestrial contact and abduction. And you give a brief, in part two, it talks about the techniques, a new vision of death and dying, which I'm quite sure that an out-of-body experience would induce. You actually see death and dying for the reality that it is, correct?
Which is a shocking difference in what we've been taught, believe me.
I bet.
Death is not at all the nasty, awful process that we've been taught to believe.
Which would probably subdue a lot of our fears as individuals, wouldn't it?
Oh, it's the first thing to go.
Right.
All that it's one thing I am not afraid of is death. And
Right.
I can say that with knowledge. I know that I will continue when this body gives up.
Is OBE...
It's not, I have no fear regarding it. And I have found that to be 100%. People know because they've already experienced themselves separated from their body. There is no mystery related to it.
Is OBE the direct path to the soul?
I think it's definitely one of them. I can think of no more direct way. Again, that's my take on it. And I know there's a lot of spiritual paths out there. I know that there's a lot of methods. I know there's a lot of different forms of spirituality, but it all comes down to one basic thing. We have to experience
ourselves,
our soul. Call it what you will. I
Sure.
don't like the word soul particularly because it doesn't really say what it is.
Right.
It's so many negative connotations. But the bottom line, we have to experience what we truly are, that essence of what we are.
Right. I agree that the word soul has been diluted through the years and through the misunderstanding of the word.
And so is the word spirituality.
Sure.
People have died for their spiritual beliefs or their religious beliefs.
Right.
And that to me I find so offensive almost when people are willing to die. I'll kill you because your religious beliefs are different than mine. My God, what an ignorant concept. You know, but yet that's considered part of people's religions to this day.
If they were so highly evolved, if the religion had the substance it had, they believed in it like they say they believe in it, and it had all that much substance, would anybody be dying?
Well, would anyone kill another person?
That's what I'm saying. Would anybody?
Unbelievable.
Right.
It's unbelievable that's how ignorant. That's why there's so many misnomers. That's another reason why this is important to learn for people, especially now.
Uh-huh.
People, we're fighting this pseudo-war, for lack of a better word, because of lack of knowledge, self-knowledge. If people knew who they were, nobody would be killing one another.
Right, they would be helping the other person up off the ground.
Absolutely.
Right.
The last thing you would be doing is killing your own brother.
Right. And you talk in part 2, you talk about the art and practice of out-of-body exploration. You actually explain the different practices and different experiences thereof, correct?
I sure do. I go into it in some quite a bit of detail. That's really what I guess I'm become best known for. I teach self-initiated experiences. I provide specific techniques that you can do.
Guide other people to the doorway and then through it, huh?
I try my best to present workable methods that people can use to have their own experience. I think that's what this is all about.
And then you get into some detail about overcoming the challenges that confront the out-of-body explorer.
Right, which are significant, and I don't belittle that. There's a lot of challenges, just like there's a lot of challenges living in the physical world.
Right.
I don't sugarcoat the subject at all. And I think this is an important point to bring up. There's a lot of people out there that do.
Right.
And there is challenges. There's energy challenges. There's
fear challenges.
There are challenges that we can't even begin to express with words.
Right.
But there are things that people should learn about so they're more comfortable.
Well, I think that is that one of the things that your chat room does on your website astralbody.com is people get together and they're able to sort those things out on a mass level, are they not?
Well, not only that, but there are groups that I've started and others have started all around the world. There's groups that meet in London. There's specific groups in almost every major town.
Really? Let me ask you this: do they get together and leave their bodies? Do they have out-of-body experiences as groups?
Some of them do. Some of them don't. It all depends on the nature of the group itself.
Sure. The substance and what everybody has in mind,
and their own individual evolution.
You know,
everybody's capable of doing that.
Yes. Now let's get inside that for a minute. Do you find, to get past our five senses, to get past the physical things and the instinctual things that we experience every day, say as our lower selves. It takes quite a measure of courage to be able to, or want to, go outside the norm and actually be a spiritual explorer. Am I right?
It does take courage, because you have to have the courage of an individual. You
Right.
have to have the courage to confront your own thought forms. You have to have the courage to break away from the institutional beliefs that dominate our group consciousness today. Let's face it, most people they're content to just believe the spoon-fed rhetoric of their religion and their government. Most people, the vast majority of people in every culture around the world, is content to just follow what neighbors are doing and not make waves.
You also talk about several different ways to to deal with fear, to actually to help a person with their courage. You talk about spiritual protection.
Yes, I do. I feel that's important. I think anybody that's exploring, or even if they're pursuing psychic development,
Sure.
they should learn about spiritual development. I mean, and spirit not only, but spiritual protection. There's simple techniques that I teach people to do, not because there's some boogeyman trying to get them. It's just that we have to remember we're in a thought-responsive universe.
Right.
And everyone should know spiritual protection, not just those that are doing inner exploration. All people should. It's just common sense to know these things. Because let's face it, we live in an environment that's very contaminated by fear and hatred. And why should everybody should protect themselves from that kind of energy that's floating around. Same way you would have an air cleaner in your house or filter your water. You should protect yourself from all the psychic pollution that's
right.
around you.
Psychic attack as well.
Yeah, psychic attack. I call it psychic pollution, because that's really what it's like when you see it out of body. It's thought forms that are just hanging in the air, negative, because everything is creative. When people think negative thoughts, they are creating something.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah, people don't understand that. Everything is every thought is a creative force.
What happens when? Let me ask you this: What happens when you think negative thoughts when you're on the other side?
You will see the result of them immediately. They're very powerful. That's one of the things you learn right away.
Right.
That's a difficult thing to really express in writing, but if you think negatively while out of body, you will manifest a negative experience within darn near instantly.
Nanoseconds.
You will learn quickly how powerful you truly are in your own realm. Because remember, you're in a more thought, when you leave your body, you're interacting in a more thought-responsive dimension. And if you think a negative thought about anything, it will manifest, and you will see the result of it, or let's just say experience the result of it.
Right, and not only...
That is one of the main things I teach people. That's one of the things people start to learn about their own, let's just say their own creative ability.
Potentials, yeah. Let me ask you this.
They learn.
Right, a negative thought, does it just affect us, or does it affect others?
A negative thought depends on how it's directed and how many people are holding the thought. Remember,
We're all one.
Paul's World War II, but it wasn't one man. It wasn't Hitler's thoughts. Hitler created a nation that was creating a group consciousness thought that was warlike. And that's, of course, what created World War II. It took more than just one man. It took the group consciousness of a nation to create the catastrophe of World War II. And that, on the astral plane, that would have been seen as an incredibly dark force that was spreading throughout the land. And it was interacting and interfering with everyone in the world. So there is no escape, so to speak. In other words, we do live in an interactive environment, and that we have to learn how to protect ourselves from these, let's just say, negative thought forms that are always in our environment.
Have you found that, as it's been said many times and come from many different places, that we are all one? We're all connected?
Yeah, I do feel that we are all connected, and that it's only the illusion of matter that creates this what we perceive as separateness.
Individual, yeah.
It doesn't mean that I feel that we all evolve into some glob, as many people seem to feel,
Sure.
or that we all
Right.
become one giant being with a common mind. I don't feel that way. I still feel that we maintain our individuality. But it's on a level that we, as humans, we have a difficult time even imagining, because we're so used to separation. That's really what we're learning in the physical world, is separation, when you look at it.
Right, and individuality. The reason why I brought that up is a negative thought doesn't just affect myself. If I have a negative thought, it doesn't just affect me. It affects the person I'm putting it at, or I'm thinking it about, people around me, and it actually affects the whole, does it not?
Absolutely.
When I have a positive thought, when I have a positive thought, therefore I act positively, and the whole is affected by that, is it not?
Yes, it is. That's the power of. That's why the. Remember the book that Norman Vincent Peale wrote, The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yes.
It works.
Right.
It actually works, and that's why goals work. I'm going to put this in one of my next newsletters that I put out once a month, and I'd like to invite your listeners and viewers to. I have a free newsletter every month, and I talk about the mechanics of this process, the mechanics of creation, which are basically an energetic process. Goals work because when you hold a thought, you're creating something on the astral plane. You're actually creating that form. You want a new car, and you focus upon that new sports car, let's say. You begin to create the mold of that on the astral plane with the focus of your own thoughts.
And not only that, let me ask you this real quick. I'll jump in here. By positive or negative, are positive or negative thoughts permanently embedded or permanently recorded by your higher self or your soul?
Everything is recorded.
It's recorded.
Of course, the results of karma. Everything we do, there is no absolution from someone else.
Right.
We are responsible for what we create. And then we have to deal with the end product of it sometime. May not be in this lifetime necessarily, but eventually we will have to deal with our own thought forms.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. We are creating, right now, everybody in the audience is creating their own future by the way they think, by the forms, the thought forms they're creating on the mental and the astral dimensions of reality.
Let's take this a step further, if you don't mind, William. If I know something's wrong, and I don't say something about it or try to do something about it, do I take on a measure of that karma as well? In essence, am I agreeing with it?
Is just from being passive?
Yes.
I think to a point, yes.
Uh-huh.
I think that people, that's a matter of conscience. I mean,
Conscience is the higher self, too, huh?
in a way it is. I mean, I think people have to be drawn, you have to follow your own conscience. I mean, there's a lot of people, if you see your neighbor being harmed and you don't step up to the plate, when you have the ability to defend someone that's being, let's just say, being attacked,
Right.
and you don't, if you don't come to bat, I think there are, I think that I just feel, this is my personal feeling on this. Let's face it, that experience was presented to you for a reason.
Right.
I don't believe in coincidence. If you see a child about to be beaten up by let's just say an older person, and you were witnessing that, you were placed there for a reason.
Right.
It's no coincidence. And if you don't act, that's a choice you made not to act. And I think there is consequences for not acting as well as acting, because you were, in a way, you have to follow your own conscience.
And the conscience, you know, especially in situations like that where it's visual, it's right in front of you. You know, your conscience comes to the bell. You know, it's not like your conscience walks away and your conscience doesn't know what's right or wrong right there, especially...
Exactly. I think there's let's just say karma created by acting or not acting. I think it's a two-way street.
Sure. Let me ask you this: through the process of OBE, can a person go to the other side and ask the moral questions or the questions to the moral dilemmas we face, as say in our society every day? You know, there's these questions that as a society we should have. Can a person as an individual go to the other side and return with the answers to those moral questions?
Absolutely, and I think that comes automatically to a point.
As soon as you experience your higher self.
I think those answers just become self-evident. To almost any issue, I think. I think a lot of the things that let's say, it's ignorance that separates us from the answers, is what I'm saying. Ignorance of ourselves.
Or denial. Denying ourselves.
People live in it's almost like there's a consciousness that's living still in the dark ages. And they still are following the dictates of a small group of individuals, whether it be a religion or a government.
Right. Can I ask you, in your experience, since you have such extensive OBE experience, can I ask you some questions about some moral dilemmas like, say, our country's facing? Do you mind answering a few?
No.
One is how the United States seems to be having its way with certain third world or Mid-Eastern countries. I mean, what would the other side say about that?
Well, I can only speak for myself.
Sure.
Well, I'm not trying to be a spokesman for the universe.
Sure.
But I feel that the United States is heading down a very, very rough karmic road because of the way that, let's face it, we are the new Rome. Keep that in mind. All great powers fall.
Right.
All of them. So will the United States. And I think the United States as...
Through its own deeds, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're creating... Every country is a group consciousness.
Right.
And every group consciousness creates group karma.
Right.
And because of that group karma, it's like the old, what you sow, you will reap. 9/11 was caused because of a reason.
Right.
And it's sad to say, but let's face it, there's been a lot of things that have been done. For instance, many Americans have no idea that the Afghan war was really a pseudo-war between the United States and the Soviet Union, where the Afghan people, had 1 million people died.
I know, huh?
And we don't even know. The average person has no idea how brutal, and this country was literally torn to shreds, and the Afghans were used in a way like some of the people in Vietnam were used. I got a long memory. I was back there during the Vietnam War. I had friends of mine killed in the Vietnam War.
I remember.
There was many villages, and let's just say peoples were wiped out in Vietnam that were acting as our allies. They were later exterminated when the communists come in and took over. I mean, literally exterminated. We didn't help them.
We walked away from it.
We walked away from it. We walked away from the Afghans after the Afghans spilled their blood to basically as our allies fighting the Soviets. Because remember, it's like many times, third world countries ended up being the fodder for the war that was actually occurring between the great powers.
This
is continuing in a way, and I feel that the United States is setting themselves up for even greater catastrophe by the way that they walk away from the messes that's created.
And you know, here at Metaphysical Concepts, there's so many moral issues or constitutional issues that we're faced with, and then one of them would be the U.S. Patriot Acts. I mean, is that, in your opinion, does that exclude the U.S. the United States Constitution from our lives? Does it nullify it?
Well, no, of course not. I think that the United States has to begin to act more morally in general around the world and take responsibility for its actions.
The U.S. Patriot Act is what I was talking about.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting off on another subject a little
Okay.
bit. That act itself,
Uh-huh.
I find scary.
Yeah.
What else can I say?
Right. There you go.
I mean, it's scary. It smacks of Nazism.
Yeah, and communism, straight, just.
And I know a little bit about this. I'm about to live I'm one of the few people in America that will be living in the last huge communist country starting next month.
Yes.
Into communist China, and I'm going to be living there for the next 2 to 3 years.
To our viewers, I want to explain that William is moving to China. Him and his family are moving to China because his wife is going to be working in China. Are you still going to be? Available to the out-of-body enthusiasts around the world when you're in China, William?
Absolutely will. I'm going to be doing online chats, and I'll still be doing my monthly newsletters. I'm working on a new book.
I was going to ask you if you're going to have time to write a new book over there.
Yeah, I'm going to have plenty of time. I'm not allowed to work over there. It's kind of a strange thing.
Okay, let me ask you this one more moral question for you, and it's quite controversial, but I'm just going to ask you. You seem to be right on the moral questions I've asked you to this point. How do you feel about the woman's right to choose, Roe versus Wade? I mean, is that a right thing? Should women have the right to choose to kill, like, say, 4,200 unborn babies a day?
Well, this is my take on it. When the big question that involves, and the core of the question is when does the soul enter the body?
Okay,
That's really the core issue that no one has brought up.
Okay, yeah, and actually I've tackled it on a couple different shows, but let me get your answer to that. When does the soul enter the body?
It varies based on my experience.
Uh-huh.
It's not at conception, to my knowledge.
Okay. Let me ask you this.
Although that may be shocking to some people. Some people don't want to hear that. They want to think that the soul enters the body when two cells divide.
Let me ask you this. When is life considered life? That is the question, correct?
I think it's when soul enters the body, and that's why this subject is so
controversial?
Yeah. And I think it varies, and tell you the truth, I don't know the answer. I'm not saying I do. I know that I've had these conversations with many people.
Like, okay, I want to ask this question.
You had Newton on the show, didn't you, recently?
Oh, yes, I did.
And did you ask him that question?
I asked him when the soul entered the body, and honestly, he wouldn't. That's Dr. Michael Newton for our viewers. He wanted to stay out of the political end of that.
See, he's smarter than me.
Well, I'm not trying to lure you.
That's
you know,
the core question.
I didn't mean to hit you with a bomb, William.
And tell you the truth, I don't know that. I don't have definitive answer on that.
Can I ask you this? And the reason why I ask is because you have extensive out-of-body experience, and you're more apt to know than actually walking down the street and asking somebody, or going to a doctor and asking a doctor. So at what point does the soul decide what body it's going to enter? Do you know that?
I think that's decided way before there's a conception.
Right.
I think that we choose our parents. Now, this is one thing I do know.
Uh-huh.
I'll put myself on the line here because I'm confident.
There you go.
That we do select our parents. It's not a random process. There's inherent lessons. We evolve through soul groups, and there's inherent lessons in a mating of two people together. There's a built-in, let's just say, dynamic that's carried over from their past lives.
Uh-huh.
And that this dynamic will definitely create a certain circumstance of, let's just say, conflict and lessons. And because of this, we select the parents because we know in advance. Remember, when you're waiting to incarnate, you're seeing a little broader picture.
Sure.
You here in the linear, dense world.
The bigger picture.
It is. It
Yeah.
is a little broad, not greatly this huge vision, but you have a little, but the bottom line is you do choose your parents. And you choose them because of the specific
environment
that is inherent in their mating that will create certain, just say, trials and lessons that you need for your personal development.
All right. Well, William, we're about out of time here. You know, I read both of your books, and they're just phenomenal. I urge our viewers to get Adventures Beyond the Body by William Buhlman and The Secrets of the Soul by William Buhlman. And I thank you so much for being here with us this evening. Is there anything you would like to say before we part ways?
Well, I would just say that this is about experiencing and not believing. Don't take my word for anything.
Sure. And
Not for yourself. Explore it, learn about it, and try the techniques, and have the experience for yourself. Don't just fluff it off like, oh, that's a bunch of hooey. This is about personal experience, not belief.
you know, I had one more question come in from, actually, you know, I've had several questions come in to me from the production booth. They like this conversation. The question goes like this: what about post-immaculate conception? What about immaculate conception? Do you know? Do you have any experience?
I don't buy that. I don't buy into it.
Okay.
I think anything is possible, though, but I don't believe in an immaculate conception the same way I don't believe that people can transmit. In other words, there's some people that believe that you take your body with you if you evolve enough, and I don't buy into that either.
Okay.
There's a lot of New Age and, let's just say, popular beliefs that I personally feel, from my experience, to be totally false.
Okay.
And I think immaculate conception is one of them. There's laws in the physical world, and they are followed.
Well, there's universal law, and not even God can break those.
Well, I just feel that there's a system in place and that it is used because it works.
And we're all bound to it.
Well, that's how I feel. But I do feel that certain souls come into the world that are so much more advanced than others that it might as well have been an immaculate conception because they're born
Highly evolved.
more evolved than others.
Yeah.
That it would appear as such.
Sure.
Just like there's, look at, certain musicians that were creating symphonies at age 5. Where did that come from? Or whatever. We've all heard these stories of these geniuses, and that's because of past lives and their evolution through many, many lifetimes. They're bringing it into this life in full bloom. It wasn't an accident. That's evolution in progress.
Yes, it is. And then you get to the point where you don't have to come back here. Am I right on that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think eventually we evolve beyond the need. We still continue to evolve, but we evolve in other forms. We no longer need the dense form to evolve.
Thank you again so much for being here. The Secrets of the Soul by William Buhlman, Adventures Beyond the Body by William Buhlman. His website, he actually has 2 websites. For the interactive website, it's www.astralinfo.org. That's www.astralinfo.org. For book information, can they order the book through theoutofbody.com?
Yes, they can.
Okay, that's out of body. That's out-of-body.com. William Buhlman. Please check these books out. Thank you, William, for being here with us.
Well, thank you so much, David.
And I hope everything goes well for you over there in China, and we're looking forward to your next book.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm looking forward to the new adventure.
All right. Take care, and I'll call you in a couple days.
Okay, great.
Good night.
Good night now.
That was William Buhlman and his infinite experience on Out of Body. This is David Maines. Good night.
Robert Stevens. Nice to see you this evening, and looking forward to sharing with you something really very important, very exciting, and it is Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of Christ. I thought I'd talk about this in terms of not only its success, but also its message, and see what astrology has to say about this and the light that it throws on this. It's going to be released on Ash Wednesday, which is February 25th of this year. And Mel Gibson, of course, has been under some considerable fire. And if we did his chart, we could see that also. But I thought I'd do the chart for the release date of this movie itself and get a sense of what it has to offer us and the kind of response that it'll get. First, let's talk about the geocentric reckonings, which, of course, is the normal astrology that we get when we stand on the earth and we look out about us and see the relationships of the planets. You'll notice that I don't talk very much about signs, and that's because there's an argument about signs and whether or not sidereal or tropical astrology is the applicable discipline. Well, we can avoid that entire discussion by taking a look at the relationships of the planets, which do not differ in tropical and sidereal astrology. So let's take a look. We'll see many, many things here, but as we normally do, I'm going to start with the sun of the day, February 25th, because that is the essence of the day. So it's talking about what is this day about? And since this is the release of this film, let's see what it has to say. The sun is trine to Saturn, which is a very nice, enhancing, mutually enhancing and supporting aspect in astrology. And this is literally exact on this date. Now, always we look for what is the most exact aspect of the day, and the reason why we look for that is because that is the aspect that will dominate the essence of the day, and in this case, it involves the sun. Well, it's very interesting, of course, the sun can be spelled in two different ways, S-U-N, as in the astronomical and astrological sun, and also, of course, S-O-N, as in the Son of God. Very interesting, and being trine to Saturn, there's a couple of things that this implies. Number one, the movie is a serious movie. It's not a comedy. It's about something very, very serious. But something more importantly, this movie was designed to represent the traditional writings as contained in the New Testament as close and as faithfully to the New Testament writings as possible. Mel Gibson bent over backwards. He even used some of the original words, the Aramaic, that the New Testament was written in. He went right to the source and tried to make this as true to the traditional presentation as the New Testament reads. So that is a perfect reflection of the sun and Saturn. Saturn being tradition and being the facts, and the sun being the essence of the day. Saturn also suggests the traditional, which this is. It's the traditional story of the Passion of Christ and his carrying his judgment, I should say his trial, his carrying of the cross, and his death. This is also a day of setting things straight and of telling the traditional story. So as the Pope said, referring to the movie, it is as it was. And that's quite a traditional statement. Also, because Vesta, the asteroid that suggests cutting through the non-essentials, things that are distractive, things that get in the way of the essential elements. Since Saturn is interacting with that on this day also, we see a day of cutting through these non-essentials and getting down to brass tacks about the sacrifice of Christ. Jupiter interacts with Neptune, and this is extremely close. It's only 1 degree 12 minutes from exact, and in astrology that is very, very tight. This is another dominating aspect in the sky for this day, and this suggests success and notoriety of spirituality and compassion. Jupiter is success, Neptune is the spiritual teachings. And also, Neptune represents surrender, which of course, this is what Christ did as he allowed himself if he truly had all those powers, and this is one of the things that perplexed the followers of Jesus, if he had all those powers, why didn't he just put down the Romans and the Jews that were condemning him? Well, clearly, he had a destiny to fulfill in sacrificing to the will of his Father, God, and knew that this was the right thing to do, and what a sacrifice it was. This man truly suffered. The movie The Passion of Christ shows that in spades, and may not be very appropriate for young children. Anybody under, say, about the age of 13 might find this a very grinding film, and any of us that have great compassion and a sense of empathy will find this movie very, very challenging to sit through. Also, Jupiter represents gift, represents being given a gift, and Neptune is a representation of the unconditional love of the divine. So Christ was the gift of the divine, and the sacrifice of Christ was to atone for the sins of man, of humankind, and thereby was a gift from God and a gift of love. Also, Jupiter is about popularizing, which certainly I think this movie is going to reach people who have never read the Bible. Maybe they've heard about it, maybe they've even gone to Sunday school. But this is going to lay it all right before their very eyes. It's going to be quite a popularization, or quite an expose and a presentation of the spirituality and surrender of Christ. This is also, Jupiter represents success. So success coming to these signatures of Neptune suggests this movie is definitely going to be a success. And Neptune also has always ruled filmmaking, and making movies. So Jupiter interacting with Neptune, this will be a successful movie. Jupiter also interacts with Mars and with the North Node. Well, Jupiter is success, as we saw and have mentioned. It's also notoriety and being brought into high profile. Well, this is success and notoriety of the passion and of suffering. Mars is passion and Mars is suffering. And also brutality, which again, I want to assure you, this movie is not short of brutality, as was visited on the historical Jesus. And another thing about this that is so outstanding about the X-ray vision that astrology provides us is that the North Node is interacting with Mars and with Jupiter. And the North Node suggests where we are moving into our next evolutionary state. So it represents moving into the next evolutionary state. Well, what that implies is that the success and notoriety of Jesus' sacrifice and the passion and the suffering and the violent brutality that was visited upon him leads humankind to the next evolutionary step. And certainly that was the intent of the New Testament, to take us from the Old Testament into the New Testament. The most suffering of all, the Son of God, leads us, or was an agent of evolution. And also it offers, and it is an offering of the greatest gift of compassion. That's the Jupiter-Neptune contact. All right, Venus is representative of both Christ himself, but also love. And it is in a very tight relationship with Pluto. The planet of passion and, again, brutality. So the transformation through love, or Pluto interacting with Venus, given by the divine, is what the message of this movie is, and what the message of the Passion of Christ and the essence of the New Testament. Dying and being reborn for Christ and our change through the divine's love is what the sacrifice of Christ was all about, and was to represent, so that all of us could partake in our surrender to the divine. Venus is in Aries. Here's one of the few times I'll mention signs, but it certainly does apply in this case. Venus is in Aries, which is taking action, and Pluto is in Sagittarius, which represents the divinity, or the divinity. And so this is the divinity taking action to express love for humankind, and to help humankind understand that God was much more than just the judgmental God of the Old Testament, which certainly is a part of the story of God, but he wanted us to know how much he loved us, and certainly this demonstrates it. Also, harsh and inflexible judgments, according to the principles of the status quo, are represented by Pluto, particularly in Sagittarius. And that is being healed by the love that Christ showed in the face of this violence and brutality, and also by the grace, which is Venus, of the divine, Pluto in Sagittarius. It's an absolutely amazing, amazing movie. It's very interesting to note that the divinity takes action expressing its love for us, Venus in Aries, Pluto in Sagittarius, offering us the opportunity for transformation, Pluto in Sagittarius, into the spaciousness, Sagittarius, of the divinity's kingdom. This is a profound, profound movie. Also, you know, it's a very interesting thing to note that on this same day, Ash Wednesday, February 25th, there's going to be a 6-way meeting, including North Korea and the United States, to try to tackle all the nuclear threats and nuclear developments in North Korea. And it seems that Pluto, of course, represents nuclear power, and also the intense passions that the North Koreans feel. And Venus is love and resolution. So hopefully this day we'll see the beginnings, or the moving forward, of resolving this very, very thorny and threatening problem. We'll have to see. Also, Venus is pledges of peace, and they will be made in an effort to solve the threat of the nuclear difficulties, and that's represented by Pluto. All right, Mercury is conjuncting Uranus. They're right together in the sky. And they're also involving Pallas Athena. So this is what that would imply by astrology. Very thrilling, brand new information and liberating news, as they say, the good news, is being brought to our intelligence, or our minds, and that's Pallas Athena. So the thrilling news is Mercury and Uranus, and our intelligence and our minds is represented by Pallas Athena, a continuing theme of the gift of this day. All right. Once again, it's very interesting to note that in the declinations that Mercury is paralleling Pallas Athena, and that's the closest aspect in the declinations. That's news, Mercury, coming to our intelligence and to our understanding, Pallas Athena. Another incredible signature written on this day. Also, the sun is parallel to Venus. That means this day is about love and about resolution, hopefully in both the North Korean situation and certainly as the message of the Passion of Christ movie. Mars is paralleling Neptune. That's action of compassion, action and sacrifice, and also the violent brutality of the Christ's sacrifice at the cross, in an expression of the compassion and unconditional love of the divine. Knowing that we all stumble, the divine is still showing us through the sacrifice of his Son that he loves us still. Quite an amazing, amazing and heartfelt gesture, and an incredible message of love. Let's see what else we've got here. The closest aspect in the heliocentric reckoning, and now heliocentric reckoning is easy to imagine. Instead of standing on the earth on February 25th, 2004, at the release date of this movie, we pretend like we're standing on the sun and looking around the solar system and seeing what the relations of the planets are in our solar system from the point of view or the platform of the sun. And the closest aspects are Mars with Chiron. Chiron is truth and life itself, and Mars is not only action, as in the grace of the divinity, but also the brutality of the persecutors of Christ. This brutality itself was bringing us the truth and was bringing us a new chance for life, which of course is the good news and message of the passion of Christ and the sacrifice of the Son of God for our stumbling and for our imperfections. Another thing in the helios that is very striking is in the what we call the heliolatitudes, which is very similar to the declinations but calculated differently, so this is an entirely different calculation. Venus, love, is in relationship with Uranus, which is liberation. This love of God is offered as a liberation from the bondage to mortality. That is certainly pointed here clearly. And also Venus is parallel to Mars. The very violence and suffering of the Christ is offering and is a proof, a watermark, a stamp of God's love for humankind. This whole Passion of Christ movie is very interesting because it brings up that God moves through using all of us, not just the good and the righteous. First of all, the Christ did not hang out with quote, the good and the righteous. The Christ hung out with some of the lower folk of society as an expression of God's love for all of us, not just those who were trying or were succeeding in being righteous. I think that's a very key part of the message of Jesus. And also, the Jews were the ones who, and you know, it's very important, the movie brings out that there were 5 Jewish judges, and Pontius Pilate asked these 5 judges, should Christ be condemned? 2 of them said no. 3 of them said yes, and the 3 who said yes threw the 2 who said do not punish Christ, threw them out of the court. It's an expression of how careful we must be about righteousness and self-righteousness and the maintenance of power and status quo, as the power and status quo elements, the 3 judges, threw out the truly compassionate and the truly understanding 2 judges. We must be careful of that, and it's another one of the messages. And the Jews that threw the other 2 judges out were the ones that felt threatened by Christ's apparent power over the masses. They completely missed the point of compassion and love and only saw their own interests at heart, their own interests being threatened. This was their motivation. Self-importance, another very important message in this movie. And the Romans were the ones who actually visited all this cruelty on Jesus, and they, too, were merely operating out of their own self-interest, how to prevent this man from creating a Jewish uprising. God didn't use the good Jews, but rather the ones that were power-hungry, the rich and the rich Romans, all those who would find it as hard to enter heaven as a camel to go through the eye of a needle. The cross is the symbol of Christianity as we see it today, very commonly, and it is the symbol of one of the most horrific tortures the Romans employed at that time. This was the ultimate proof of God's love for humanity. Did not use some humane way of killing Christ, but rather the most cruel. That is the most intense proof of God's love for humanity, and that is the point of the Passion of Christ. And the Romans and the Jews were an integral part of fulfilling God's will. There is no reason to feel negative or to feel hatred or upset with any of those who persecuted Christ. They actually were serving the divine will of the Father, God. If we keep that in mind, we'll see that God's love extends to all and that we should not visit any retribution on those who serve God's will, even though it is not to our liking. This has been Albert Stevens with Exploring Astrology. I hope you found this interesting. I find this one of the more moving movies of my life, and I hope you discover God's love within. Thank you.
Face the Truth is a bold new public education initiative that brings the reality of abortion to the highways and downtown intersections of cities and towns across America, confronting those who have turned away from the tragedy of our age.
America is in a death ethic. We've killed 47 million children. That's unconscionable, and something has to be done. And we're doing what has to be done. We're showing America the face of abortion.
People don't see these pictures anywhere, do they?
This is the first time that 99% of the people have seen these pictures. So it's been an education. We're a real visual society, and people need to see victims in order to empathize with them. And you see that with the Holocaust pictures that are in history books. You see it with the victims of starvation and war in third world countries now. You have to see what's happening to people in order to empathize and make a change, to make a difference.
People have said, is that really what an abortion is? They don't know it, and this really brings it to them.
People are not aware of the traumatic results of abortion, the horrible traumatic results.
And the pictures are tremendously effective. I know that because that's how I got in the pro-life movement. I saw a picture of what they do to babies, and I said, that is intolerable. I got to fight that.
To get people to think seriously and deeply about the value of human life, and when they're faced with a crisis pregnancy, remember they saw these pictures. What happens to that baby?
That's what we call this, face the truth. The truth is abortion is ugly, it's murder, it's killing children, and the American people have to see it. So we're going to launch these efforts all over the United States.
So what are you doing here today?
Well, we're just showing people the truth about abortion. We want to stand up and let people see it.
I'm educating people about what abortion is.
I believe that this abortion is really wrong, and we want to come out here and give our support today.
There's so many ways to fight the culture of death. Why do you consider this an important way?
Because this is the way that reveals that abortion is truly the killing of an innocent human being. Because these photos undeniably show human beings who have endured injustice. And there's no way of getting around that.
Even though these pictures horrify me, I think that without something like this, that we become complacent.
Yeah, it's graphic, and it's really disgusting. When people say, oh, that's disgusting, I say, yes, it sure is disgusting. We have to do something to stop this. It's absolutely disgusting.
Do you think this is an effective way to do this?
It's one of many effective ways. I think taking it to the people, we've had a lot of good reactions.
Overwhelmingly a good response. Lots of, like I said, lots of thumbs up. People saying, well, God bless you, what you're doing is right, this is marvelous.
I've been on this tour for most of the cities. They were saying to us, we're so glad you're here, it's about time.
Participants of Face the Truth stand with large signs depicting fetal development and abortions, while others distribute a variety of pro-life literature. The display is preceded by warning signs, so that those who wish to avoid seeing these pictures may take a different route. Volunteers hold their signs in position for a little over an hour, then move on to the next location.
It's very simple, just a matter of getting out and holding a sign up and being a witness for what is right and true.
I think that the people who have come have been really glad they did. They feel like they've made an impact. They've gotten reaction from people.
It's my privilege to be here.
They're willing to be out here and take the flack, but also see the good that this is doing.
It's been a real blessing to be a part of this. I just found out about it on Sunday, and I had the privilege of being at 2 locations yesterday.
I'm here because I feel like this is as much a Holocaust as what happened in World War II with the Jewish people.
And I would come all the time just to stand up for the little ones who have no one to speak for them but us.
Okay, if you can all come with me. Young man.
can. I need your help.
Face the Truth is highly organized, peaceful, and legal, and it gets reactions from people on all sides of the issue.
The video you're about to see unmasks the terrible truth that abortion is an act of violence which kills a baby. And the violence is spreading. As happened to black civil rights activists in the 1960s, peaceful pro-life demonstrators are now routinely being savaged by police attacks. If you think that's just inflammatory rhetoric, the next 6 minutes may change your mind. Some of the children we'll show you represent typical 9- and 10-week abortions. Because abortions are never committed prior to the 6th week of pregnancy, every child abortion kills is already so fully formed that her heart's beating and her brain's producing brainwave activity. Many of the babies you'll see, however, range in age through the 2nd and 3rd trimesters of pregnancy. Most were taken from garbage bags, removed from a dumpster behind an abortion clinic in Houston, Texas. They've been included to emphasize the sickening fact that the vast majority of all abortions are committed simply as a means of birth control. We also want you to understand that convenience abortion is legal throughout all 9 months of pregnancy.